Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with my friend Alfonso Rachel, and this is The Virtue Signal, a new show made possible by our new members at BillWhittle.com, where we thought we would talk about the sort of philosophical underpinnings of Western thought and Western society and see if we can figure out what the basics of what makes a happy life and a miserable life before we start getting into the specifics of policies and so on. So we thought we would start with the basics, the seven cardinal virtues and the seven deadly sins. And this brings us to the fourth of these, which is the sin that's often known as sloth, sometimes indolence, laziness, that kind of thing. But basically, we know it when we see it, right? I mean, a person who sleeps till 3:00 in the afternoon on the couch, does nothing but play video games, you could call that as a pretty decent modern definition of sloth. And the virtue that is the antidote to this is diligence. Zoe, it's great to talk to you as always. What's wrong with sleeping all day and playing video games all night if you can get away with it?
Bill, you want me to think right now?
I do. I have confidence in you.
Well, hey, as long as you can afford it, right? If you can afford on your own efforts to be able to sleep all day and just wake up with a game controller in your hand and stuff like that, if you can afford to do it, hey, knock yourself out. That's all you. But if that entails somebody else facilitating you to do that and you haven't done anything to pay for it, that could be a problem.
Okay, well, let's talk about let's just assume that you do have the money. Let's assume that you're a trust fund kid or whatever, and your father or grandfather or grandmother, for that case, whatever. Somebody worked very hard and built up a huge sum of money, and you don't have to work at all, and you can literally get away with it. You can just stay up and party all night, sleep all day. But let's take the example of sleeping all day and then playing video games all night. If you have the means to do it, it's still not a good thing to do.
Sure.
Sloth corrodes the soul the way that any of these other sins do. And so what is it about a life that is spent sleeping all day and playing video games all night that is represented as a sort of a primal evil and a mortal sin?
Well, I mean, even if that person is like a trust fund kid or anything like that, there's one thing to be able to get the money. There's another thing to be able to keep it. So if you want to stay enjoying the party life and sleeping until today and stuff like that, there has to be at some point a way to be able to maintain that income, and diligence is going to have to come into play at some point. But shoot, man, Bill, I mean, people keep making money playing video games. They got tournaments and stuff like that.
But what's wrong with it? I mean, clearly. Somebody who basically is filled with sloth like that is missing something important.
Sure.
Right? I mean, there's it's not just physically unhealthy. There's a real sort of it's not just a physical slowness. It leads to a kind of a mental sloth and a spiritual sloth. It's a state. It's kind of like a potato state. That's why they call them a couch potato. Yeah. Definition of somebody who's slothful. There's so much you're missing out on. There's so many things that you could be doing that are a better way to live in this. And furthermore, if you were to get up and move and do some other things, then the things that you do enjoy doing would certainly become more enjoyable to you, I would think.
Well, so I reckon for some people, Bill, they're wired to not appreciate reality itself. They want a virtual, they want a virtual, this reality that they have in their video games where they can feel like in this realm, they can do so many things. Heck, they can die and be resurrected. They can, and all these things that are able to them that just seem more interesting to them. And maybe to them feels more satisfying. They really do feel like they're accomplishing something in how they're able to be rewarded, whatever the reward is in this theater that they're in. So once again, it's selling to them, hey, this is sloth. And as far as they're concerned, no, they're not. They're kicking butt, dude. Look at that score. So. Yeah,
but it's a fake,
virtual,
what?
Yes.
It's like you haven't really paid the price for it. My experience in life has always been that everything that the more I wanted something,
Mm-hmm.
and the harder I worked for it, the more I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And the operational part of that for me is the harder I worked for it, the more effort I put into it. And the definition of sloth is the attitude of essentially expending little or no effort on things. And so you deprive yourself of the reward. You deprive yourself of the reward because you're not willing to make the sacrifices that diligence and hard work require. There's nothing more satisfying in life than finding what you're good at in the world and doing good work. Let me just put it that way. Doing good work. Whenever I've done anything I thought was good work, that's a kind of a spiritual happiness that I've never encountered anywhere else.
Sure. Now, and of course, I'm typically kind of playing devil's advocate, right? As I come from these angles sometimes, Bill. But I hope that folks can bear with me when I say that greed or sloth and diligence itself on its face is not necessarily a virtue, because you can be diligently evil. Right? You can be diligent. And sloth, even the sloth sometimes, actually sloth can be a good thing. You know why? Because when we look at some of these politicians, I'm like, you know what? It would be pretty good if you just sat down. You know what? Don't do anything today. Don't go back to work. Don't go in there and make new flipping laws that are really just encroaching on our freedoms. Why don't you just stay in bed and play video games? Okay. So
you're saying, in a case like that, you're saying, okay, maybe you're stuck in neutral, but at least you're not going in reverse.
Right. Now, when it comes to diligence, hey, it was a diligent effort to pull off this fraud, wasn't it? I mean, these people work tirelessly. Evil don't sleep, man. Evil itself is diligent.
Well, let's say you had somebody you genuinely cared about, and you found that that this was their life, that they were basically sitting on the couch or watching TV for 18 hours a day, or playing video games and eating Cheetos and getting fatter and basically not moving and not expending any effort at all. Number one, would that bother you? And number two, if it does, what would you say to that person to get them out of it?
Yeah, I would definitely be like, you need to get some sunshine. It's like,
why?
Get out there and get some of that vitamin. Exactly. Why? Look, if you really love video games and you really want to be on top of your game, you might want to go out and get some sunshine and get some fresh air. You want to be able to have some good oxygen so your brain can process more effectively. You want to make sure that your brain, because your brain is going to eat everything anyway. Don't you want to make sure that your brain is fueled properly? It's like, I guess tap into their interest. If you really want to be efficient at this, let's sharpen your skills. You want them thumbs and stuff to work properly, and you want to make sure that your muscles are fed and that them signals are bouncing correctly. Get your behind outside and get some sunshine, man, and eat some real food instead of Hot Pockets.
So now you're connecting a reward to effort, right?
Sure.
I mean, that to me is what this whole idea of diligence and the opposing of sloth is that effort is its own reward. And the more effort you put into something, the greater the reward feels. And one thing that I've noticed about sloth, because I have spent many years as a slothful individual, many. And the thing I've learned about sloth is that the more slothful you are, the easier it is to become ever more slothful. It is a very difficult cycle to get out of. The more you sit on the couch, the less you are willing to go out and do something other than sitting on the couch. And it builds and builds and builds until finally the idea that you might have to get up and go to work or something is practically terrifying.
Yes.
And I've been in that kind of a dependent state. And it's only through sometimes, in one case anyway, the actions of others that basically forced me out. And once I was out, I began to realize what a horrific trap that life of sloth on the couch is, how small it is, how limited it is, and how empty it is.
Yes. And once again, Bill, this comes back to if we're talking about these virtues and the standard of therein, it comes down to that spiritual element. And even with sloth, people can, and all these things, Bill, people feel justified in them. right? Even in their sloth. And, there's, there could be driving engines for sloth. It could be depression, man. It could be this lack of motivation, people trying to find a purpose for their life. And if they can't be doing the thing that they want to do, then what's the point of getting out of bed? I want to do this. And we're in a society where everything is like so instant gratification oriented. And like I said, this ain't a new thing, but just more and more, that's kind of like what it's becoming, this instant gratification thing. But when they start to see the work involved in these things that people do, they're like, wow, I didn't want to do that. I didn't know that it takes diligence. They look at the TV screen and they see these people just automatically appear on screen, in their lavish houses and stuff like that. And they don't know the work that it took to get there. Even with, sadly, even in Christianity, people sometimes they think that God is like this genie who just snapped his finger and the universe came into existence. But diligent study of the Word of God shows that no, that's actually not how I did it. You got to read the whole thing. It was a very diligent process. So if God was just the kind of person who just snapped his finger and the universe came into existence, that would be an example of sloth. All I need to rely on is my magical powers and things just appear. Hey, well, God himself shows that he doesn't exactly do that. The sons of God, his angels will testify. It's like, we were shouting for joy when God laid the foundations of the universe. He built this whole thing from scratch, right? And if you read the whole word, you'll see that it was a very, very long process.
Yeah, so if God created the entire universe, it shouldn't be too much for you to get up and do a shift at the fry station at McDonald's.
Nice way to bring it home, Bill. Nice way to bring it home. Wow.
You're welcome. There is also, aside from physical sloth, I was speaking with a Jesuit priest the other day, and he said that sloth can also be spiritual and it can be mental. It can be just a sort of a contentment with just a kind of a contentment with the lowest possible effort. And this kind of brings me to wrap this episode to a subject that's obviously pretty pressing in society today, and that's just general physical fitness. We hear stories all the time about how the armed services are saying we just can't get people who can do 5 pull-ups anymore, and this sort of thing. And physical fitness, the diligence of exercise and staying in shape and being at a reasonable weight and all these things is its own reward. It is certainly you are just a happier person pretty much in every way. And I think probably the thing I'm kind of getting at here in a way is I see so many video gamers going through this rage quit. So they're in a situation where they're playing these video games and the immersion is real enough so that they're genuinely getting adrenaline rush. And then either somebody knifes them from the back or something, and then they smash the monitor with their fists. And there's no physical exercise to burn that adrenaline off. That adrenaline is in your system to activate your cardiovascular system and your muscles for action. And in a world that has become as slothful as this one has, all that adrenaline does is flood your tissues and stay there. And it turns you into these rage-filled killbots.
Sure. And now if looking at sloth and then diligence again, because we're talking about hard work is its reward. You need to get off the couch and get these chemicals in your body that's not going to just stagnate and you turn you into a psycho. But, you want to be diligent. But even diligence, Bill, can be toxic because you have people out there who become workaholics. You have people out there who are out there just working, whether they be at the gym and they're just working out. It's like, I'm not getting the gains that I want. I want more. And they start taking roids and stuff like that. And you have people who are constantly trying to pursue this work and they can't even be satisfied with their own diligence. And the thing is, once again, it has to come down to what's the standard? What are you building your diligence on? Because even a person's diligence can leave them feeling very empty. Now, sloth, the spiritual sloth can come out when a person is just they don't have the energy. They don't want to exert the labor it takes to move their ego aside, to move their pride aside, to realize that there is one standard of virtue, and it comes in the person of Yeshua. Then you have the diligence of people who will go through all these exercises and do all these things to try to justify why they do not have to believe in him. These are the things these are the real poisons of sloth. And these are the real poisons of diligence. Diligence itself can be deceptive. You can be deceptively diligent, especially towards yourself.
Well, I think probably to wrap this up, my experience with sloth, both the inside and the outside, is that the less energy you expend, the less energy you're capable of generating. And conversely, the more energy you expend, the more energy you're capable of generating. And whatever your desires in life may be, exercising hard work in order to get closer to those goals or desires not only is its own reward, but it also provides you with a lot more capability to do that in the future. And like everything else, it's either a downward spiral or an upward spiral. And your point about diligence is well taken. Once again, everything seems to come down to some sense of moderation, some sense of not being obsessive in any one direction. But certainly people would be happier if they were to expend more effort on real life goals and understand the genuine satisfaction and pleasure that comes from really achieving something. And the harder that thing is to achieve, the better it feels. And as I said a moment ago, that enables you to do even greater things.
I can dig it.
I can dig it too. All right, man. We will be back next week with another couple of episodes of the Virtue Signal. We'll finish up our look at these 7 cardinal virtues, and then we'll start taking a look at some news stories of the day and start to figure out how these foundational ideas of virtue work and don't work. Because basically, the entire reason for doing the show is that free people governing themselves have to be virtuous on some fundamental level. And if they're not, then freedom is not for you. And I don't want to get to that place. And I don't guess you do either, do you, Zoe?
Negative.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this edition. It's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. And we will see you next time right here on the Virtue Signal.